Alright, so it's official. There are no video chat websites where you can have a dialogue. Philosophical or intellectual, you can't have that. It's not like Stick'em. That website was ended 7 years ago, but it was good. I guess the developers sold their butt, like, you know, who could. Game frozen again. 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. I'm starting to get why video games are a waste of time. I'm starting to get that type of mentality. Yeah. Slow internet. There we go. Number internet. Yes.
这里有网络吗？
You
你
know,
也可以
do
说
we have
这儿有网络吗？
All right, and it's all the
这里有
same
网络。
using the same word here, but
这里。
said differently. 好，然后 what was
再
their
下一个
response?
是网络。
Okay.
他说你有网络吗？网 is the
It's
word
a
look
net.
like a net.
And actually, kind of to me, it looks like a little SWAT net. That you
Check out FlipsideGaming.com.
It's all about money. Yeah.
Bus trip just to get to Toronto. That's just to get to Toronto. Now, where they hold the GPs, they hold them in these convention centers that are way, way, way out on the edge of the city and like near like the airport and stuff. It can take hours to get there. So imagine you have to travel 3 or 4 hours there, 3 or 4 hours back on top of paying the exorbitant prices for this box. It's just absolutely mind-blowing that they would consider this a reasonable answer. Like, what do they have GPs in Canada? In 2 places at most? Toronto and Vancouver? Is that it? It's just like the same. It's got to be the same deal in the States. There's only so many locations that they have this going on at, and yet they expect this to meet demand. It's not a reasonable response, guys. It's totally not acceptable. I just look at it and go, how do you think anybody is going to think this is okay? Like, they're screwing up so bad. And I don't know how long it's going to take for them to learn. With Twitch and what happened with Jerry T bowing out of the Worlds there. For the first day, Wizards was like banning everybody on Twitch who said anything about it. They were ban. So I went and actually tested it today. I went on there because there's a lot of people in there asking about Jerry, and now they just hold all the questions for moderation and then dump them out afterwards. Like, it's still, now they'll let you say Jerry. Before it was just mentioning, it would be like ban. Now they'll let you say it, but it's totally being moderated. It's like, your comment has been held for moderation. It's like, accepted kind of deal. It's just absurd. I mean, obviously you have moderation, but they're trying to control the narrative so firmly that, you know when you start to hear about like a country where like they control their news so tightly that to get any real news, the people who live in that country look to other countries for accurate reporting on their own country? That's like Wizards of the Coast can't be. They're basically, as soon as Jerry did his protest, Wizards of the Coast marched Rich hanging out, and he just can't. Well, Wizard of the Coast is doing nothing wrong, and everything is perfect. We are already addressing all concerns. Nothing is going to change. We have everything well in hand. Another 25 years of greatness. It was just pathetic. They just right away were like, boom, here you go. In before somebody points out Wizards has the right to censor. Well, you know what? Companies they can totally censor whoever they want. But the thing is a company is supposed to manage its image with the public. The idea of censoring people, the idea is supposed to be that you censor these few voices that are screaming about you that are going to cause you a problem. But when you start censoring the majority of the people, or a good chunk, it no longer has the intended effect. They're not aware of the Barbara Streisand effect, where by literally trying to bury this, like by trying to bury it, they made I wouldn't have logged into Twitch and gone over there and typed in Jerry a few times to see what would happen if they weren't acting that way. Do you know how many times I saw people say the name Jerry over and over and over in like the 4 minutes that I was there? Like, dude, he accomplished his goal by getting them to help inadvertently, by basically them just doing what they do and going, oh, just trying to wave it away and pretending like it didn't happen. His voice is too big. And every voice, oh yeah, no, good job. Good job. We're selling magic sets at 3 times some social justice class. Well, what's Buddies for you? Oh, wow, man, it's been an hour and 20 minutes. What the hell?
Yeah.
I could talk a lot. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I never shut up.
Yeah.
You want to see the art? Yeah, man.
No, fuck you. I'm out of here, man. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Chopstick. Lipstick, important. I mean chopstick, shit. Sting. No. Why would they, what? What happened?
I call this one visual bafflement. Cardboard rectangles. Today, we are here to talk about a brand new card from Guilds of Ravnica. But today, we're going to talk about some other stuff first to lead into it. The first thing I want to do is a little bit of a quiz. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you just the artwork from a Magic card, okay? Just the artwork. And I'm going to give you 4 options. There's a little quiz here, A, B, C, D style, right? So, when you look at this artwork, out of these 4 abilities, what do you think is the ability on the card? A, First Strike. B, Flying. C, Trample. D, target creature can't be regenerated this turn. Damage that would be dealt to that creature this turn can't be prevented or dealt instead to another permanent or player. When the creature dies this turn, exile the creature.
Let's see. Immediately, I think of flying. It's a bird. Yeah. Yeah. Think of flying. I mean, it's a calm background with a tree, small tree. That's new life. Even Celestia, it should be like a 1/2 with flying that costs 4 mana. It's green white. It's irrelevant. Green white doesn't have flyers.
If you chose D, you're correct. And that is clearly transmitted by the artwork. Take a look at the whole card here. Notice something? It doesn't fly. Why would you do this? You can't do this sort of thing. This is an abomination. Now, in terms of the flavor behind it, in case you're wondering, they tie it together in the flavor text by saying, if the whippoorwill remains silent, the soul has not reached its reward, which is kind of cool, actually. It gives kind of a mystical feel to the bird, and it's like, wow, this thing can determine whether your soul gets to leave peacefully or not, kind of deal. That's pretty crazy. But the problem is in the artwork. Now, obviously, this is a really old magic card, and we don't see this level of problem with the artwork. Although, on a side note, I do want to give a shout out to Force of Will in terms of smarten up. Oh my God, they're egregious.
You try to trick us to the area from the game. Why? Because this is not even from coming out.
For this, there is a creature that I was playing with called like Q-Zoo or something. I don't know. It's like a sacred beast. It looks like a phoenix, okay? And it's got like gigantic wings. It's pictured mid-air. If you look down at the bottom where they depict the power and toughness, where it says like 400, 400, you can see the one claw is curved upwards and the one is above it. It is in the air. And they have two versions of Tinkerbell. You know, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, the little flying fairy there? One of them flies and one doesn't. And the non-flying version depicts her in mid-flight with giant wings. Now, when I was playing games, well, I was a beginner. I attacked with that, just going, oh, it flies, you can't block it, or trying to block flyers with it, like completely playing wrong because the artwork did not reinforce the concept. It all needs to make sense. Now, that's a huge example of visual bafflement, and it's not something we see. I haven't seen any magic cards really that are that egregious in terms of you look at it and you just go, oh, it has to have that ability, and it doesn't, which is nice. But the card we're going to talk about has some serious issues, and the deeper that we dig into it, the more ridiculous that it gets. Now, these aren't mechanical issues, these are flavor issues, so keep that in mind. I know some of you like to go into the comments and be like, why do you care so much? You shouldn't care. It's like, look, I don't do deck techs here. This is what I do here. If you don't like it, no problem. But don't go down into the comments expecting it to change. Like, have you looked at the other videos here? What's the matter with you? All right, so we've got Glaive of the Guild Pact. Now, that is a 2 casting cost artifact. The creature gets +1/+0 for each gate you control and has vigilance and menace. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are a series of gates in Guilds of Ravnica, and they previously existed in the Dragon Maze set as well. The idea behind the gates is there was actually a race, basically, through the Dragon's Maze. And there are 10 gates representing each of the 10 different guilds. So the quest was to get through all of these different gates. So they made different split-colored lands that represented the gates for each of these 10 guilds. Now, there were cards in the previous sets that gave you bonuses or cared about mazes. The most interesting to me is Maze's End. And this one is a really funky land that taps for a colorless mana, or 3 and tap it. You can return it to your hand, search through your library for a gate, put that gate straight into play. Then if you have 10 gates with different names, you win the game. And to me, that is a fun, flavorful alternate win condition. I enjoy alternate win conditions a lot, honestly. And that gigantic poster that we use when we're moving the guilds for the like when my subscriber count goes at certain levels, like we did for the 10,000 subscribers, that's the poster we're using, a gigantic Dragon's Maze event poster that they sent out. So to me, Maze's End is really cool. I like that they're making more cards that interact with gates, because obviously they had previous cards and you can build kind of like a gate tribal deck, right? Which is fun. There are some interesting but not very good gate cards, and in all fairness, Glaive of the Guild Pact feels like a fairly decent gate card. It gives the same kind of feeling as a Loxodon Warhammer in terms of like you being able to give a creature a decent boost. Now, this doesn't feel as overwhelming as a Loxodon Warhammer because Loxodon Warhammer does give trample and lifelink, so it's huge life swings and crushing through on creatures no matter what. Now, this comes through with the menace and can have a decent bonus based on the number of gates, but I don't feel as impressed by this as Loxodon Warhammer. Now, overall, the card isn't too bad, right? The problem comes in, because you're obviously wondering, well, where's the bafflement, right? Some of you already know. For those of you who are aware of old school weaponry, specifically associated with Dungeons and Dragons as well, you will know that what is depicted in this artwork is in no way a glaive, okay? Just to let you guys know what a glaive is, it is essentially something about 8 to 10 feet long, just in terms of the handle, which is like a long wooden, picture like a long wooden, thicker broomstick with a gigantic sword blade on the end. So if you took the blade that's coming off of this and you attached it to a 8 to 10 foot long pole, then you would have a glaive, okay? This is not a glaive. Now, some people will try and technically argue that at one point, way back in the history of language, that people used glaive as a term for swords. Now, that's not really the case. It was only used loosely and not really actually in reference to real weaponry. So that, to me, it doesn't count. And the problem I have even further with that is Ravnica is a European-based world, okay? That's where the architecture comes from. That's the inspiration for it. That explains why you would have things like glaives. It makes perfect sense. I mean, you've got the French who are there in Europe. It makes perfect sense, right? But glaive is derived from gladius, which is a Roman weapon. Now, I know that the Romans came from Japan and weren't European. Oh, wait, no, that's not the case at all. Yeah, so as I'm clearly trying to lay out here, they could have called this the gladius of the guild pack. If you look, a gladius looks almost identical to this. The only difference would be the hilt would be a little more rounded, okay? When it comes to that. The sword itself, it would be basically the same kind of shape. The blade is shaped the same way as a gladius. So this is a fail on that level. But the reason it's really frustrating for me, and it wouldn't be nearly as annoying if it wasn't tied into Dungeons and Dragons the way it now is. There's multiple layers to this. What you need to know is Wizards of the Coast owns Dungeons and Dragons. Hilariously enough, Magic the Gathering was designed as a game for Dungeons and Dragons players to have to play while they were waiting and sitting around. Like if you were in a poll, Jedit O'Janin, and he's got
female
so big that they bought D&D, own the property, and even with this game has are the exact kind of the Golden Scroll. Bum bum bada bum bum bada dun 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 dun.
What's this?
But ultimately, is it making people happier right now? Most technology, I would say no. In fact, you and I were talking about social media before this, about just not having Instagram on your phone and not dealing, and you feel better.
Yes, I think that one of the issues with social media that's been pointed out by many people is that
Joe Rogan show.
I think maybe particularly Instagram, people look like they have a much better life than they really do.
Right.
So
by design.
Yeah, people are posting pictures of when they're really happy. They're modifying those pictures to be better looking. Even if they're not modifying the pictures, they're at least selecting the pictures for the best lighting, the best angle. So people basically seem they're way better looking than they basically really are.
Right.
And they're way happier seeming than they really are. So if you look at everyone on Instagram, you might think, man, there are all these happy, beautiful people, and I'm not that good looking, and I'm not happy. So I must suck, you know, and that's going to make people sad.
Yeah, you suck.
So when in fact, those people you think are super happy, actually not that happy. Some of them are really depressed. They're very sad. Some of the happiest seeming people, actually some of the saddest people in reality. And nobody looks good all the time. It doesn't matter who you are.
No. Yeah. It's not even something you should want. Why do you want to look great all the time?
Yeah, exactly. So I think things like that can make people quite sad.
Well,
just by comparison, because you just sort of people generally think of themselves relative to others. We are constantly rebaselining our expectations. And you can see this, say, if you watch some show like Naked and Afraid, or if you just go and try living in the woods by yourself for a while, and you'll learn that civilization is quite great. has it's a lot of it. It's people want to come back to civilization pretty fast on Naked and Afraid.
Wasn't that a Thoreau quote? The comparison is a thief of joy.
Yeah. Well, happiness is reality minus expectations.
That's great too. But the comparison is a thief of joy really holds true to people. Is it?
Theodore Roosevelt.
Roosevelt. Fascinating. When you're thinking about Instagram, because what essentially Instagram is with a lot of people is you're giving them the opportunity to be their own PR agent, and they always go towards the glamorous, you know. And when anybody does show, you know, hashtag no filter, you know, if they really do that, like, oh, you're so brave, look at you, no makeup, you know.
Yeah.
They look good anyway. You look great. What are you doing? Oh my God, you don't have makeup on. You still look hot as fuck. You know what you're doing. I know what you're doing too. They're letting you know. And then they're feeding off that comment section. Ooh, just a little sitting there like it's a fresh stream of love. Like you're getting right up to the source as it comes out of the earth, and you're sucking that sweet
lot of emojis.
love water.
Emojis.
Yeah.
A lot of emojis.
My concern is not so much what Instagram is that I didn't think that people had the need for this or the expectation for some sort of technology that allows them to constantly get love and adulation from strangers and comments and this ability to project this sort of distorted version of who you really are. But I worry about where it goes. Like, what's the next one? What's the next one? Like, where is it? Is it going to be augmented? Some sort of a weird augmented or virtual sort of Instagram type situation where you're not going to want to live in this real world. You're going to want to interface with this sort of world that you've created through your social media page. Some next level thing.
Yeah. Go live in the simulation.
Yeah, maybe
in the simulation.
Some Ready Player One type shit that's real. That seems, we have that HTC Vive here, and I've only done it a couple times, quite honestly, because it kind of freaks me out.
Sure.
My kids fucking love it, man. They love it. They love playing these weirdo games and walking around with that headset on. But part of me watching them do it goes, wow, I wonder if this is like the precursor. Just sort of like if you look at that phone that Gordon Gekko had on the beach,
yes.
and then you compare
big
that.
Cell phone.
Yeah, you compare that to like a Galaxy Note 9. Like, how the fuck did that become that, right? And I wonder when I see this HTC Vive, I'm like, what is that thing going to be 10 years from now when we're making fun of what it is now? What is it? How ingrained and how connected and interconnected is this technology going to be in our life?
It will be, at some point, indistinguishable from reality.
Where we'll lose this. We'll lose this. Like, you and I are just looking at each other through our eyes. I see you, you see me. I hope.
You think so?
I think you probably have regular eyes.
This could be some simulation.
It could. Do you entertain that?
Well, the argument for the simulation, I think, is quite strong, because if you assume any improvement at all over time, any improvement, 1%, 0.1%, just extend the time frame, make it 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. What would civilization, if you counted, if you're very generous, civilization is maybe 7,000 or 8,000 years old, if you count it from the first writing. It's nothing.
Civilization on Earth. Written.
So, if you assume any rate of improvement at all, then games will be indistinguishable from reality. Or civilization will end. One of those two things will occur. Therefore, we are most likely in a simulation.
Or we're on our way
exist.
to one, right? Well, but just because we exist, we could most certainly be on the road. We could be on the road to that, right? It doesn't mean that it has to have already happened.
We could be in base reality. We could be in base reality.
We could be here now on our way to the road or on our way to the destination where this can never happen again. Where we are completely ingrained in some sort of an artificial technology or some sort of a symbiotic relationship with the internet or the next level of sharing information. But right now we're not there yet. That's possible too, right? It's possible that a simulation is one day going to be inevitable. That we're going to have something that's indistinguishable from regular reality. But maybe we're not there yet. That's also possible.
Calcium deficiency.
That we're not quite there yet. That this is real. When I touch that
feels
wood,
very real.
Maybe that's why everybody's like into like mason jars and shit.
Mason jars.
suede shoes. People going to like
Most
craft
instances
restaurants and they want
are
raw wood.
show
Everyone wants to see metal.
same
People,
symptoms.
it seems like people are like
It fits
longing towards some
perfectly
weird
as a
log
simulation.
cabin type
Sure.
nostalgia.
Reality.
Yeah, like holding on, like clinging, just
Sure.
dragging their nails through the mud, like "Don't take me yet."
Yes.
I want to.
But then people will go get a mason jar with a wine stem or a handle. That's dark. Makes me lose faith in humanity.
Wine stem and a handle. Do they have those?
Yes.
Oh, those dirty people.
Oh,
That's just
terrible.
assholes. That's like people make pet rocks,
Rough.
right? Some people are just assholes. They take advantage of our generous nature.
It was made with a wine stem, made with a handle.
They made it that way.
Yes.
So it wasn't like they
manufactured
welded
like
it
that.
onto the mason. Ah, you
No, that would
fucks.
be fine if there was they glued it on or something. But
Right,
it was,
that would be
made,
like
it was made that way.
white trash chic. Oh, this is disgusting. Look at
Yes.
this. Here it is
Pretty
right
harsh.
there.
Yep.
This is terrible. Yeah. That's like fake breasts that are designed to be hard, like fake breasts from the 60s. It's like if you really long for the ones with ripples, here we go. Yeah. That's almost what that is.
Yeah.
What are you going to do, man? There's nothing, you know, there's nothing you can do to stop certain terrible ideas from propagating.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to sound like things are too dark because I think like you kind of have to be optimistic about the future. There's no point in being pessimistic. It's just too negative.
It doesn't help.
It doesn't help. You know, I think you want to be. I mean, my theory is like you'd rather be optimistic. I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right.
Right.
At least err on that side.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you're pessimistic, you're just going to be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody wants to be around you anyway. If it's the end of the world, you're like, I fucking told you, bro.
Yeah.
The world's
Exactly.
ending. Yeah. It is
I
what
mean,
it
might
is
as
for
well
all. I mean,
Enjoy the journey.
right, if you really want to get morose, I mean, it is what it is for all of us anyway. We're all going to go, unless something changes.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, ultimately, you know, even if we just sort of existed as humans forever, we'd still eventually that'd be like the heat death of the universe
right.
a zillion years from now.
Right, even
Um,
if we get it past the sun. If we
yeah.
figure out a way past the sun running out of juice.
Eventually, it's going to end. It's just a question of when.
Right.
So it really is all about the journey.
Or transcendence from whatever we are now into something that doesn't worry about death.
The universe as we know it will dissipate into a fine mist of cold nothingness eventually.
And then someone's going to bottle it and put a fragrance to it, sell it to French people in another dimension.
It's just a very long time. So
Yeah.
I think it's really just about how can we make it last longer?
Are you a proponent of the multi-universes theory? Do you believe that there are many, many universes and that even if this one fades out, that there's other ones that are starting fresh right now and there's an infinite number of them?
Entire
And
sense
they're just
of
constantly
why
in
you
this
would
never-ending
create a
cycle of birth and
simulation.
death?
I think most likely, this is just about probability. There are many, many simulations.
Yeah.
These simulations are, we might as well call them reality, or you could call them multiverse.
These simulations, you
choice,
believe, are
though.
created? Like
No
someone
choice.
has manufactured?
They're running on the substrate.
So,
That substrate is probably boring.
boring. How so?
Well, when we create a simulation, like a game or a movie, it's a distillation of what's interesting about life. You know, like it can take a year to shoot an action movie, and then that's all distilled down into 2 or 3 hours. So, let me tell you, if you see an action movie being filmed, it's boring, super boring. There's like lots of takes. Everything's in a green screen. Looks pretty goofy. Doesn't look cool. But once you add the CGI and have great editing, it's amazing. So I think most likely, if we're a simulation, it's really boring outside the simulation. Because why would you make a simulation that's boring? You'd make a simulation way more interesting than base reality.
That is if this right now is a simulation.
Yes.
And ultimately, inevitably, as long as we don't die or get hit by a meteor, we're going to create some sort of simulation if we continue on the same technological path we're
Well, if
on
you
right
think
now.
about
Yes.
it, it's like
But we
infinite.
might not be there yet. So it might not be a simulation here. But it most likely is, you feel, other places.
This notion of place or where is a
Flawed.
yes.
Yeah.
Flawed
Like
perception.
where, like
right.
that. If you have this sort of that Vive, you know, which that's made by Valve and Steam and it's really Valve that made it. HTC did the hardware, but it's really a Valve thing.
Makers of Half-Life.
Yes, Valve, great company.
Great company.
When you're in that virtual reality, which is only going to get better, where are you? Where are you really?
Right.
You aren't anywhere.
Well, whereas
You're in the computer.
what what defines where you are? Is
Exactly.
it right?
It's your perception.
Is it your perceptions, or is it a scale that we have under your butt? You're
What do
right
you-
here. I've measured you. You're the same weight as you were when you left. But meanwhile, your experience.
Why
is
do you
radically
think
different.
you're where you are right now? You might not be.
I'll spark up a joint if you keep talking. Your manager's going to come in here. We might have to lock the door.
Right now, you think you're in a studio in LA.
That's what I heard.
You might be in a computer.
Oh, listen, man. I think about this all the time. Yeah, I mean, it's unquestionable that one day that'll be the case. As long as we keep going. As long as nothing interrupts us. And if we start from scratch and, we're single-celled organisms all over again, and then millions and millions of years later we become the next thing that is us with creativity and the ability to change its environment, it's going to keep monkeying with things until it figures out a way to change reality. To change, to almost like
makes you
punch a
think
hole
that
through
that hasn't
what
happened
is
yet?
this thing into what it wants it to be,
I mean,
and create new things.
it
And
makes
then-
more sense that we're in a fake reality. I mean, look at every organism in this planet. The only ones that need so many minerals, amino acids, and essential fatty acids are human beings. The only ones who talk species, animals, organisms that speak so many languages are human beings. Dogs are fine talking the way they talk and low frequency. Same goes for elephants. Now, what convinces me is the MK Ultra program and the neurophone. You see, the MK Ultra work was they would control another human being through sound vibrations, right? And the neurophone is like you get all the information you hear through the transducers. Give it to my mom. Either way, through the transducers, two things you put here. I think I've used it live on other streams. You put them, you get your information permanently on your head. You just don't know it. The reason is because you just hear it in a low frequency, and it stays there, but you won't forget. So it's really good for learning languages. So if I'm talking to somebody, I don't know, Arab, I would go like Salam alaikum ya, and they will go Salam alaikum. And I will go like Ati Arabi, and they will go, I don't know, تعرفي شوية عربي لغة عربي, and then we'll proceed. That's just like, I mean, languages are easy to learn. They're just like programming codes. They're not hard. They're really not hard. The hard one is Spanish. So we give gender, which is another form of code, to inanimate objects like a lamppost, notebook, a computer, a mouse, a keyboard, a fan, and air conditioner. Oh yeah, I got carried away. Either way, I think we're in a fake reality. Fake in the sense that I truly think this is a spiritual simulation. Because why the hell would you experience this reality called life? If it ends, fine, but right now this simulation sucks completely. I'd rather die. It's easy. I'd rather just die. Because it just makes no sense. It would also explain reincarnation, other past lives. It would explain why you would have memories of your past lives, because you won't need a brain to keep your memories. I know that because I remember everything when I used to have Alzheimer's. I remember the office of the neurologist who helped me. I remember everything. I'm no Superman. I'm just saying I know everything I have seen and know. I also remember things from 3 years old. I also remember when the military was about to abduct me. It was a female old lady. She was fat. She just failed because my mom was faster. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it would make sense like that if that's a simulation reality. I truly agree.
And those new things will intersect with other people's new things, and then it'll be this ultimate pathway of infinite ideas and expression, all through technology.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna wonder, like, why are we here? What are we doing?
Let's find out.
Well,
I mean, I think we should take the set of actions that are most likely to make the future better.
yes.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the only
And then reevaluate
logical
those
thing
actions
to
to
do.
make sure that it's
The only
true.
thing of value in this reality is suffering, and so you have to mitigate all the suffering that you can.
Welches,
That's
Banco
how it
Pin
goes.
y Columbia Central presentan el certamen juvenil más importante del Caribe, el quinto festival Ponte los Cortos. Si eres elemental, intermedio o superior y te apasiona la filmación, esta es tu oportunidad. Participa de cortometrajes, documentales, videos musicales, adaptación, short y para los chiquitines, los kits de Welches. Visita ponteloscortos.com para más información, reglas e inscripción. Y dale like a nuestra página de Facebook e Instagram. Te invita Banco Pin. Presentado por Liberty Cable.
And so does every other
I'm fascinated by this
organism.
Planet 9 thing they're trying to observe now, because this is something I've been studying for a long time. That they've been thinking there was very little evidence of it up until recently, but that there was another planet outside the Kuiper Belt, somewhere outside of Pluto. It's one of the reasons why they declassified Pluto as a planet. But now they're almost positive that there's a planet out there. They said, I think that they said within 99% certainty that there's a gigantic planet somewhere around 4 to 5 times the size of the Earth that is out way, way, way past Jupiter. And so I was going to a lot of these YouTube videos that were describing it and then reading the comments. The comments were fascinating. So that's a totally different sort of world.
Yeah.
You know, people are debating like the ramifications, and then every
Neil
now and
deGrasse
then
Tyson
one of those Zacharias
said a argument irrelevant about 4 years ago. He said a comment. He said, we have to be careful on the west side of the U.S. because of Apophis. There's a small chance it might go into orbit to Earth, and things can go catastrophic really easy. Now, why would you mention that if it's a very low chance that it can happen? The only relevant thing to me is that it's something like the mirror. Oh, you see something. Okay, you see something 5 billion years away. It's not gonna worry me right now. It really is not. It just becomes irrelevant. It's like talking about something irrelevant, yet somehow it happens. You must have known something. He made that argument like 4 years ago. He said he was worried about Apophis. There was a small chance that Apophis could hit the Earth. Now, it makes no sense to me why you would say that. It makes no sense to me at all. Anyway.
Sitchin people would jump in there. Do you know who Zachariah Sitchin is?
No.
Zachariah Sitchin was a guy who actually, ironically enough, predicted this in the 70s. But he called it the 12th planet because that's when they thought Pluto was still a planet, and then they thought the moon was a planet. Like, this is all based on the Sumerian text. This is all getting real convoluted now. But Zachariah Sitchin, he is a biblical scholar. He's dead now. But he wrote all these books about this culture from another planet called the Anunnaki. And this is transcribing the ancient Sumerian text. The Sumerians were the oldest. There he is. See that thing that he's holding up in front of him? That is a piece of Sumerian art that depicts these...
that looks like some fucking Transformer shit.
Well, it does, right? Well, what's interesting is you see that star... You see the star, the sun with all the planets? That is our solar system. It's not just our solar system. That is all the planets in all the right sizes, which is kind of fucking crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was 6,000 years ago when a lot of people didn't even think that the world, they thought the world was flat, right? But it also depicted this orbit, this what they believe is one of the things that the Sumerian text describe, is this elliptical orbit of this planet called Nibiru. And this planet is in the outside edge of our solar system. It comes between Mars and Jupiter. In this Zachariah Sitchin translation, I think it was every 3,600 something years. And that this is where the Anunnaki came from. And then what they did is they came down here, they studied some lower hominids, they introduced their DNA into these lower hominids and made human beings. And so he had predicted this planet being outside of our solar system for a long time. It's different.
And it's there.
Yeah, it is there.
Do we know what's on this planet?
Well, the orbit is different. The size of the orbit is different compared to what he described. No, we don't even have a picture of it, so we definitely don't know what it looks like. But the Anunnaki, as described by Zachariah Sitchin, is the same thing as in the biblical term of the Elohim. Like, there's also different descriptions of these giants that came from somewhere else. Like those, I think the description of Anunnaki, what it means is those from heaven to earth came. And the idea is that there's advanced beings came down here and genetically engineered human beings. It's widely discredited by other scholars of ancient Babylonian and Sumerian culture, but fun as shit to pretend and read and wonder, well, what if he's right, man? But see, when you do look at some of the stuff, though, you go, okay, well, how did they know about the solar system? How did they know about all those planets? Not only that, they had the caduceus, the caduceus, the symbol for medicine. It's also the double helix of DNA, and that's what he believes it represented. He believes that that caduceus symbol that they had represents DNA, and that's what the ancient Sumerian people.
Yeah, he probably knew about the reincarnation too. Alright, what's this? David woke up.
We get here. How do we do this? I'm going to let you guys know right now. You guys did it. Give yourselves the biggest round of applause. No. Afternoon that you're not.
Years to try to break through to the truth. A lot of times in our community in the past, we have sort of unfairly stigmatized the military as always being the bad guys, or the intelligence community. If you hear a word like CIA or NSA, oh, it's just this horrible thing. But there have always been, and will continue to be, good people in these organizations. Not all of them, but surprisingly more than you might think. And so they have been fighting this whole time to try to get you the truth. And so part of what I'm going to do is honor some of these fallen heroes. And the problem is, since this war is a covert operation, the nature of the war is almost completely obscured to us. We don't understand even what's going on. We don't know the names most of the time of who's been fighting this thing.
I know, right? Let me get something. Be right back, guys. Get down with the sickness. Get down with the sickness. Get down with the sickness. Would you give it to me? Are you here? I still alive. Not behind me. situation. I know you're here. Why won't you show up? Wonderful. If your friends show up. Show. Yeah.
Reason why you're here is that you believe that the government of the U.S. and other countries as well is covering up some very deep truths about the UFO phenomenon. And we have been lied to for so many years, while at the same time knowing that through something called vertical integration, that this same military-industrial complex, which actually consults on the Hollywood movies, is showing you the films of the things that you're supposed to not believe are true. Right? It's schizoidal. You're put into a reality box where your perceptions about truth are being fundamentally altered. And we've been given a bill of goods that is entirely false. We've been given a very restrictive paradigm about the nature of this world, the nature of reality, and that cannot possibly be true. This idea that we're alone in the universe, that there's nobody out there but us, that UFOs have never come here, the whole question of ancient civilizations, obviously what we're dealing with there is extraterrestrials coming in and using the native materials of Earth to build structures. Hence pyramids and Stonehenge and all this kind of stuff.
No.
They didn't want to bring all that stuff with them. They didn't need to. Just use what's native. And if you have anti-gravity, then you can levitate stone of any size and do some really cool stuff with it. The problem with these pyramids is that there's no evidence of construction. There's no evidence of a build-up to how that construction took place. Anthropologists want to see things like pottery shards that show a progressive civilization moving up to the level where those attainments are possible. It doesn't happen. It's not there. Without that evidence, we have to start looking at other conclusions, and those conclusions include the written histories of these people, which we invariably call mythology. And then we assume that it's all made up when they talk about their gods. When they talk about people that looked like them, sort of, but had extraordinary capabilities, including levitation, telekinesis, flying shields in the sky. It's actually all over the Bible once you know what you're looking for in the Old Testament.
I think it's
flying shields, all this kind of stuff.
I believe you.
So it's really ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's really ridiculous that we are at a point in our society where we still even have to ask the question why or if.
Egyptian for a reason.
We should have the answers by now, but those answers have been hidden from us. And as I was saying, and I think a lot of you were probably here when I did the talk on the Antarctic Atlantis. Clap if you were here for Antarctic Atlantis. Okay. That answers that. Probably a few of you weren't. But that's okay. So the point is, this group that is running the planet is a lot more interesting than you might think. And it's interesting in terms of like a really great villain in a horror movie or a sci-fi film, but it's like sci-fi horror, really, once you get into this. Because the group that is running our world is a cult. It's a cult that has the books, the documents, and the artifacts, the mummies, the craft, to prove that they are an extraterrestrial invading race, believe it or not. That's what we were talking about.
But they're human.
There are people with elongated skulls. The remains thereof have been found all over the world. In South Africa, all over Mesoamerica, Peru, Bolivia. We see all of this stuff in Egypt with the pharaohs, and all of those elongated skulls have been confiscated. We see in Siberia evidence of elongated skulls and miners that dug them up. The Mongolian barbarians that were conquering seem to have elongated skulls. And we find tombs of the elite in Europe in which, when you exhume the skeletons, they have elongated skulls. And they are part of these bloodlines, part of these so-called Illuminati. Then it gets even deeper, as I said the other day, where you find out that the reason why they've been keeping this blood separate is that they might have lost the elongation. Okay, their skulls will revert back to looking like ours due to the basic genetic conditions of Earth and the wave genetic aspect of the Earth, the fact that Earth is going to push whatever comes here to be looking like the biology that is supposed to be here. So if any of these people stay here for very long without leaving, there will be genetic pressure that will actually revert them to look more like us. But there are some who still have the elongated skulls, who don't actually live here, and they have been using portals to come and go from Earth for at least 10,000 years. There's working portals that have been in place the whole time. They come and go, and one of the big places that they come and go from is the Vatican. Believe it or not. So, and we got Emery Smith here this weekend. You got to hear from him. Give him a big round of applause. Now, he got to see a lot more of the Vatican than my other insider, Pete Peterson. Pete Peterson was able to go in there to review certain books and was told that they had books that went all the way back to a civilization that had been on Mars. And that this Mars civilization blew up their planet, which was formerly known as Maldek or Tiamat, now is just the asteroid belt. And then in the course of events, some of them migrated here right then, 500,000 years ago. Others migrated to the moon. And then the moon was attacked, apparently by the Draco, reptilian humanoids that we've talked about. They do look like a reptilian head on a human body, okay? They're not shapeshifters, they just look like that all the time. But the moon was attacked, and these people crash landed on Earth 55,000 years ago, more or less. And that is where the legend of these so-called fallen angels comes from. So you have to understand, in the religion of the elite, in the religion of the Illuminati, at the highest levels, they believe that they are human-like descendants from Mars and Tiamat, but that they have the books at the Vatican Library, books from that original civilization before their planet blew up. Books that have, as Pete Peterson said, gorgeous pictures of space stations, spaceships, blueprints, diagrams. Certain books he saw were all filled with code, like some kind of barcode. It's very, very bizarre. And when Emery got to go there to the Vatican Library, he saw a lot more. And he also saw all these artifacts that they were storing in a room that apparently Pete didn't get to go into. And they have been pilfering these things from all over the world. This goes back to the Egyptian priesthood that had done a lot. Because Egypt is built on top of the ruins of an older civilization where this all started. If you dig down in the Sahara Desert, 40 to 400 feet down, you're going to find ruins all over the place. And one of the things the Cabal really doesn't like, incidentally, is that there are huge, huge statues buried under the ground of people who look like they are of African descent. And this group is very racist. They consider that the white people on Earth are the descendants of Lucifer. Believe it or not, that these white-skinned people didn't exist here before the folks with the elongated skulls showed up. So the origin of the white race begins with the areas of Europe where they landed, and they had the red hair or the blonde hair with the elongated skulls. Some of them were giants. And then there were migrations of those people, which is why you see these funny mummies that appeared in China funny mummies that have appeared in Mesoamerica, etc. So look, what I would suggest is to understand we're all descendants of extraterrestrials. There is no purebred native Earth human. We've all had lots of people come here and seed different races. So this group has been ruling through fear, terrorism, intimidation, financial corruption for thousands of years. And during the time of the Crusades, they were able to use the Muslims invading Jerusalem to rile people up and get them to go and fight to get the homeland of Abrahamic religions back. And in that process, the Knight Templars were the military-industrial complex of the time. And they became a breakaway faction. And that led to a point in the 1300s where the King of France and the Pope created this big, big attack against them on Friday the 13th and killed many of them. And that led to them becoming very upset and forming a splinter group. They went off to places like Portugal and Scotland, and they continued to progress. They had the best marine technology, and they became the pirates. So that started in the 1300s. As the European countries are plundering Mesoamerica, these shipments of gold were being interdicted by the Knight Templars, posing as pirates with their symbol, the Jolly Roger or the Skull and Bones symbol. And that's how they got to be so wealthy. That's how they built up their base. By the 1500s, they had become so powerful with all this hidden gold that a deal was actually struck with the Vatican, a business deal, where the Templars were brought back in secretly and they formed a partnership. And this is also during the time that you have the Jesuits in the Vatican who are using the confession as the early form of the NSA. Right? Think about it. You have to confess your sins. What you don't realize is that the priest is in there writing all that shit down. This is true. This is history. The cabal, if you want to call it that, was able to reassert control of the British government in the 1500s with King Henry VIII, and then he started to do really crazy stuff, passing these things called Bills of Attainder, where you cannot oppose him without being killed. And he actually killed several of his wives. He did not get along very well with women. And so as a result of this weird right of succession, his daughter Elizabeth ended up becoming queen. And she had a court astrologer there named John Dee who started to mess around with a cult. And he started to do these weird magical ceremonies and basically rediscovered how to successfully summon negative entities, or what we would call aliens. And these are the Draco. It's the same reptilian types. So when you see gargoyles and these creepy statues of things, that's what they were seeing when they were doing these ritual ceremonies. So it makes a lot more sense once you think about it as an actual extraterrestrial group. These extraterrestrials told the British twice in a row, don't bother to invade, don't bother to counter the invasion of the Spanish Armada that's literally sailing in to destroy England by sea. Let us handle it. John Dee is doing all of his black magic stuff, and he tells Elizabeth, just stand down, don't put any ships out there. Twice in a row, the huge storms appear that completely wipe out the Spanish Armada. All the ships sink, everybody dies. And the British didn't even bother to go out there. That sounds like magic until you think of the idea that they partnered with an extraterrestrial group that is very negative, that had anti-gravity capability, and all they got to do is churn up the water. Then it becomes really easy to see how this happened. So a very, very important point to understand here is that the way this magic works is you have to tell people what you're doing. That way, in universal law terms, technically we are being enslaved by our own free will choice. That's what they would like us to think. But this is also their downfall. Now, John Dee understood this. Elizabeth understood this. Elizabeth's illegitimate son was handed off to her lady-in-waiting, Lady Bacon, and he becomes Francis Bacon. Okay? Francis Bacon becomes the father of Freemasonry because the group, this deposed Knight Templar group, needed to get a bigger membership on the secret side. So Francis Bacon discovered when he was an adolescent that his mother was Elizabeth, and the really shocking thing for him was that he had had sexual feelings for her. So this is where Hamlet comes from. Francis Bacon wrote the Shakespearean plays. The true William Shakespeare was illiterate.
Yeah, I get it. This gotta be something like that on the internet. Hold on. Lizard. Furbies. It's like there's no. Lizard Furbies. Alright. No, it's not that one I'm talking about. What's this? Tanunk. Aw. What happened to you? I like your feet. I like your feet. Let's see. I'm gonna get sued. I'm gonna get sued. You know what? Oh God! Lizard. That's the. Jesus. Come on. Go. Come on. It's like they pretend to have a tail. It's an anal plug. Gonna be funny. Hey. Let's go with human lizard. This looks like a monkey. Alien life. Alright, let's see that. Oh. Yeah. It's like kind of like right. Oh my. Right. No, this one is the most convincing. No. 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 What? No. No. I would believe that one. Because of these. But this is a drawing. Barack Obama, oh shit, he's a lizard, man. Look at this shit. He's half green. He's Hulk. Maybe that's what the Hulk coming. It's he's a reptile. A reptile. A gecko. Oh shit, man. We're being invaded by geckos. And they're evil. Come on, the dragon. Miss my dragons. I miss them so bad. Alright, alright. They're anal plugs. Your mom was a lizard. You would hit that. You know what? And she was a lizard. I can't imagine that.
Next.
And
when he died,
the
there were
tail
no
would
books
get
in his
in the
house,
way. You would be
but
like
then he
hitting it,
posthumously
and then the tail
published
would
6
get in the
more.
way. You would go like.
So Francis Bacon took the Mithraic initiation rites, which was an Egyptian mystery school cult, took all the basic elements of it, the lodge, the aprons they wear, the ceremonies they do, and he turned it into Freemasonry and planted it in places like Scotland and Portugal where these Knight Templars had their safe havens. This allowed them to begin recruiting on a massive, massive scale, having a secret order. And so by the time you're into the 1700s, they've actually got a higher order within the other order, again, to try to recruit more people, and that's the Illuminati. Adam Weishaupt, that came in Bavaria. And they try to tell you, oh, well, the Illuminati died out when Adam Weishaupt died. No, it's not true. It's been around the whole time. So even back in the 1700s, there was an alliance in Russia that was aware that this group existed and has been working to defeat them. And that's a very important point. The original American Revolution was an anti-Illuminati revolt. The founding fathers were people that had access to mystery school teachings but wanted to do the right thing. And that's why they stressed freedom in the Constitution. And they really were attacking the British Empire because they knew there was something very evil going on. Abraham Lincoln was fighting against them. He started to issue a state-based currency called greenbacks, in which the U.S. was printing its own money and flipped the bird to the British bankers. And he got assassinated for that. And immediately after Lincoln was assassinated, the greenbacks stopped being printed, and now they call the Federal Reserve dollar the greenback, kind of conflating history. After the Lincoln situation, at the same time this is going on, these cabal people, these Illuminati people, want to get back out into space because they believe that they are these ancient astronauts that crash landed here, and they had found stasis chambers that were in Ohio, underneath one of the rivers. There's a mouth down there you can go into, a cave. And what they found was this glowing stone levitating on wires. And around the stone were these sarcophagus of UFOs as being kept hidden from us. In Ohio, underneath one of the rivers, there's a mouth down there you can go into, a cave. And what they found was this glowing stone levitating on wires. And around the stone were these sarcophagi of giants with elongated skulls. And Lincoln went in there and signed his name on the wall of the cave, as did many other of the people during that time. So they've had some really cool inside stuff the whole time. The Vatican is loaded with all kinds of cool artifacts and books that they're not going to tell us about. So there have always been people who understand that they are an extraterrestrial civilization that has invaded, and they see us as useless eaters. They see us as something that gets in their way, and we are protected by a God that they believe is evil because that God ordered up the biblical flood of Noah that destroyed them and their empire, which was Atlantis, as we talked about the other day. So this is a lot of information, I get it. If you haven't heard this before, your head is probably spinning, and you're either going to try to follow along with what I'm saying or go into a very entrenched position of hate, usually correlated with crossing your arms like this.
Yeah, protection.
You have to understand here, the scope of the truth is very difficult to even encapsulate into 90 minutes like this. But during the same time that some people were looking at these stasis beings in Ohio, the Illuminati folks were trying to build a space program. And so they started with dirigibles. In the late 1890s, there were all these airship sightings. The founding of the U.S. Railroad was done by Harriman, one of the Illuminati bloodlines, names. And then they say, okay, everybody, get on board the train, the transcontinental train. We'll give you the guns, we'll give you the ammunition. Shoot as many buffalo as you can. Have fun. And they did all this advertising about it. So that was a genocide plan by the Illuminati to destroy Native Americans by taking away their food supply. And it worked very well. It's really, really sad, but that is what happened. This is one of the things you hear from insiders. That was a deliberate attempt, like the idea of giving them blankets coated with smallpox. These people are sick, and they need to be stopped. And what they've been doing is unconscionable. So in the late 1890s, because they owned this railroad, people were having dirigibles, these flying balloons with motors on them, a lot more advanced than anything we saw out in the open, landing, and people coming out who were speaking German and talking to people just randomly landing. And now it's like, oh, it's a UFO sighting. No, no, no. This was their early space program. By World War I, their dirigible technology had gotten very advanced. And as I was saying to my wife yesterday, really the worst that we ever hit as a society was World War I. Because the Germans were actually launching chemical weapons out of these dirigibles before they got banned because they were so horrible. The scope of death in World War I is just unbelievable. And it was during that time that you have the Fatima sightings, where these 3 little girls, or actually it was 2 girls and 1 boy in Portugal, were visited by an apparition that they assumed was Mother Mary. It never actually said what it was, except it said, "I am the angel of peace." And then on the 13th of the month, for I guess 7 or 8 months in a row, this flying disc appeared, and it would block out the sun. They didn't have the word flying saucer back then. It shot out rainbow colors of light, and by the final one in October or November, whatever it was, 90,000 people were there to witness this spectacle. And it was raining. And when the whole thing was over, everybody mysteriously had their clothes dried to the bone. So World War I was you know, the Fatima stuff was basically telling us, don't join the war. That was a message to Portugal. And it was a horrible thing, but they ended up going into the war anyway. Then you have World War II, where right after the U.S. joins World War II, we have this infamous Battle of Los Angeles, in which a whole fleet of ships flew over L.A. Lots of people saw it. Thousands of very large munitions were fired at these ships, and some people even died of heart attacks, and the ships were unharmed. So it's very clear, you know, these cover-ups occur. Roswell occurs a few years later, 1947. The whole thing's covered up. A lot of speakers here are going to be going through the history of that. We have meticulous data. And at that time, the military-industrial complex got their hands on extraterrestrial technology. Technology that works, technology that can fly around. But they were not anywhere near as successful as the Germans had been, because the Germans cut a deal with the same Draco reptilians that were working with Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth and protected them from the invasion by the Spanish Armada. So this group is real. There are actual extraterrestrial reptilians, or saurians as they're also called. It's very important to understand this. I do not suggest that they are shape-shifting biological beings that look like us. That is a misnomer. David Icke and I have talked about this through kind of a secondhand source. And what I've said is, if you think that you're seeing somebody shape-shift, you're probably just seeing a telepathic overlay of the face of these beings that they're in contact with telepathically. And a sensitive person might see that flicker over their face. It's happened to me. I have seen that. It was really, really shocking. When I met a high-level Illuminati insider and he was shaking my hand, he gave me this devilish grin. His face popped into this thing. And it was very frightening. And even though I was in public in front of other people, I actually just took this step back. And he goes, "How did you like that?" I did not. Okay. Now it's funny, but it's true. This stuff really is happening. So the Germans, and I have multiple insiders that have talked about this, the Germans, as they're progressing with their secret space program, starting with dirigibles, the Draco basically come in and say, you guys really need some help. You're not getting it here. Hot air balloons are not going to cut it. Let's give you something real. So they brought in this guy, Victor Schauberger, who had discovered a UFO type of technology. Yeah, there you go.
Thank God. I love you for mentioning Victor Schauberger. Nobody knows about him. In 1940, the Germans discovered how to pretty much anti-gravity technique, anti-gravity technologies since 1940. I'm so glad I joined the military. I was about to do the biggest mistake of my life and I saved it. Alright, So in 1940, Victor Schauberger learned how to manage the age of technology. They could only take the disk that they had and only move vertically, but not to the sides. Hitler supposedly dies in 1948. Now, I'm more than sure that he just forgot. Why? Because he had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I had Alzheimer's. You forget shit really fast. And the doctor who was treating him was giving him 23 intravenous drugs a day. Imagine that. That's like 2 an hour, and he's a military guy who's always busy. He's gotta sleep, so that's at least like 2 or 3 an hour. It's insane. He must have been through a lot of pain. That's why probably in all those videos he's always pissed off. But what I think and say is that the only thing that worries me in a good way is, okay, if Hitler died because of the MD, okay, it's one thing that's bad, and people are still getting killed by MDs. They just follow the MD's advice, even though it's completely wrong. I don't know if the MD who treated Hitler did it with knowledge that it was going to fail, or without knowledge, or this is what I really think happened. It makes all the sense, because we would not have won World War II without the MD treating Hitler like he did. There was no way. The proof of that, you can say like, they say a lot in history that Hitler thought that the Germans were the supreme race. White skin, blonde hair, and clear yellow blue eyes, something like that. Those are the Pleiadians. Those are the Pleiadians. It says alien all over. Yeah, it says alien all over. So in 1948, those scientists that were working with Hitler were not arrested or executed by the rules of war at that time in 1948. They went to work for the U.S. government. Now that goes even further, because in 1942 or 43, I think it was the FBI. They changed some rules on that. And then in 1945, we got the CIA. And it all lines up. Then you get that with Hitler, and they don't get arrested. Oopsie daisy. And they just go work for the U.S. government. And then, let's see, 1948 that. In 1950, we mastered gravity control. I know that, I don't know what year she died. She probably died in 1961, Marilyn Monroe. She knew about the alien technologies and knowledge. She wanted to say this openly, but she was murdered in 1961. She was the girlfriend of John F. Kennedy's brother. John F. Kennedy also tried to disclose the information. That's why you see in the video he talks like a secret government is, not good. You can YouTube that. And then he got murdered in 1962. Within the military-industrial complex, you can see the Marines. Like, you get to know them. Like, I was so into the Marines. I don't have to know. I just had to see. I mean, usually they will write their paper. They will hold their pens in a certain way, and they will write and talk in a certain way. That's how you know they're Marines immediately, and the muscles up here. Bam, bigger. because they use a lot of pull-ups. I could have done a lot of pull-ups. I used to do like 20. Yeah. I used to do a lot of great things trying to join the Marines. Even though I had a mess trying to join, and after I got a mess and learned how to reverse my symptoms, I still went to join until I found out about all this crap because of reading history. I need to prepare reading history books for my MOS, Military Occupational Specialty of Ground Intelligence Officer. A Ground Intelligence Officer because I have a bachelor's degree as a graphic artist, which I can also tell like so many fake things, horribly done fake things that they show in the internet and in television. You also have shows that they removed from airing. Lie to Me. You learn about micro expressions. I have one of those books there from the doctor about micro expressions. It's really, to me, it seems all intuitive, and sadly a lot of people don't read now, so it's like you need this, you need a man like this, David Wilcock, who's talking, because people don't fucking read. I don't get it why, but that's true. They don't read. Let's see what else we got. The MK Ultra, so that works. What I'm interested in the MK Ultra is that I know for a fact that the neurophone was invented in 1968. Now, you can change biology in the human body through sound. Now, you can also heal with sound, which is interesting. That's why you're seeing the sounds I play here on the stream. But yeah, I got super lost. I got so much info.
They brought in Tesla's technology, and they came up with
Not
a
Tesla.
mercury-based turbine that they had in the late 1930s, and they were perfecting it, called the Bell, and it was also called Kronos because it would actually change the flow of time when you fire it up. They had a meeting, and I was told this was in like 1939 in the Himalayas with the Draco. First time the Nazis got to meet the Draco in person. And almost immediately, the Draco gave them all kinds of technology to be able to go out into the universe. So as early as 1939, 1940, you have Nazis traveling around the solar system, discovering there's a lot of extraterrestrials, there's a lot of ancient ruins.
Smoking weed, right? Here we fucking go. Yeah.
They were given protected space on the moon and Mars to inhabit and to build their own bases in conjunction with the Draco. In the meantime, the U.S. is way the heck behind. They only got Roswell in 1947. By that point, the Germans already almost had 10 years of working on this stuff. And then, as we were talking about in the panel the other day, in 1952, there was an overflight of ships over the U.S. Capitol building. And so literally, people on the ground were seeing a fleet of UFOs flying over the Capitol. It caused a big uproar. There's lots of stuff you can research about this. And we've now heard from multiple insider sources that was the German Armada. They didn't really lose World War II because they still had Antarctica and they still had their technology. They allowed Germany to fall because they couldn't control that part of the war, and they didn't want to reveal their hand. They knew the bigger battle was in space.
Yeah.
So they allowed Germany to fall. Hitler was squirreled away to Argentina, where he lived out his life until the 1960s, as it turns out. And there was an interesting show called Hunting Hitler that was from the Alliance talking about that. And then once I exposed that that show was an Alliance show, all of a sudden it got canceled, which was really annoying because they were taking you to places that had all the Nazi insignias, Nazi swastika swimming pool, all kinds of crazy stuff, all in South America. So most definitely the German initiative continued, and they made an offer that the U.S. couldn't refuse in 1952. They forced them to join this secret space program. So the U.S. military-industrial complex had already been penetrated by Project Paperclip, which was Nazi scientists that came over, allegedly not Nazis, and there were supposedly rules that you couldn't be a Nazi. That wasn't true. They were bringing in all these scientists by U-boats and dropping them off, and nobody even knew what was going on. So they basically just transferred their operations to the United States. It's very important. Also important is to understand that the Germans and the British were not in competition. They were both the same family. Hitler was the illegitimate son of British royalty, believe it or not. And you can look that up. I've done a lot of research on that, showing how Hitler's face is exactly like the face of King George. They're all part of the same family. So they took a British royal and they dropped him off in Germany, and then they create this apparent villain. So this is what I've been saying all along. What these guys do is they own both sides of the war, and their real goal is to try to reduce population and gain control of the planet. So Hitler was British. The Germans and the British were the same. That's why when you do the research, you find out that American corporations were building Hitler's Wehrmacht. Ford Motor Company, I had a college class on this in 1993. Ford, and I would be scored on whether I was right based on answering this question. Ford Motor Company built Hitler's tanks with tank plants in Germany, and when the Allied bombers blew up the Ford tank plants, Ford personally repaid Hitler to rebuild them as fast as possible. I had another class that started the same year, and in that class, my professor said that Boeing had built Hitler's bombers in America, starting them out as commercial airliners. Then they were shipped to South America, where they took the seats out. Then they were shipped over to Africa, where they were repainted as Hitler's bombers and given the right tools, and then sent right in. The whole thing was a big con. It required, the power of the German army required the U.S. Germany was not industrial enough on its own. We had a much more large amount of land and much more industrial power to do this for them. But then the legitimate people in the military were actually fighting against the Germans and won that war. So it's a very complex story. 1952, as I said, the Germans overflew the Capitol. A secret deal was reached where they agreed to join the German secret space program. And this is all becoming a matter of documented history now. We've gotten it from Pete Peterson, we've gotten it from Corey Goode, we've gotten it from William Tompkins, other insiders as well. So the pieces are now fitting together very nicely. With this in mind, the U.S. starts to go deep black. And by the time Eisenhower got into office, the President of the United States was no longer on a need-to-know basis. And so one of the people we see at all these events, Richard Dolan, let's give him a big round of applause, everybody. Broke this incredible story where in 1958, Eisenhower tasked this man, who was actually a CIA agent, he never gave his name, this came out in 2013, and this man claimed that he was a CIA agent who actually was hired by Eisenhower to invade Area 51, to lead up that team. And here's Richard Dolan interviewing this whistleblower. So this is the quote from Eisenhower that we get from this whistleblower in that video. Eisenhower, the president, said, "We called the people in from Majestic 12, from Area 51 and S4, but they told us," meaning Area 51 and these Majestic 12 people told us, that the U.S. government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. What? Well, you all know this, but I mean, for shaking with rage as he says this, right, with his finger quaking and everything, I want you to tell them, whoever's in charge, that they have...
Good. 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 I can't hear my headphones. So I'll turn it all the way up. Click on that stupid thing. Maybe I had to restart. Oh, well. All right.